Tina, perhaps today, what are the markets shaking off and what should they be considering?
Thanks very much. I mean, I think what we see is a profound disconnect between the fact that Iran's direct attack on Israel broke a major taboo in terms of targeting Israeli territory and firing from Iranian territory. I think markets have misinterpreted the technical failure of the attack. Some significant proportion of the ballistic and cruise missiles simply failed to launch, we understand. Plus, Israel's superior air defenses were really on display. Iran would not have expected their attack to be so spectacularly foiled in this way. They did intend for it to be within what we should think of as the gray zone, not triggering a major military response, but they did intend to inflict damage. And so we're all lucky that didn't transpire. But this was not a symbolic attack. And I think the other mistake that market participants are making is putting so much faith in Bibi Netanyahu that after a 6-month conflict where he has repeatedly failed to heed United States, demands, wishes, whatever you want to call it, advice, that is now suddenly going to change. By firing those missiles, Tehran just bought Bibi Netanyahu a lot more time on the political clock.
You've written as well that we've entered a danger zone for political risk. Certainly the conflict in the Middle East has been brewing for some time, and this weekend, the latest escalation. How do you think things will progress from here?
It's really important to look at the whole ecosystem for geopolitical risk and where it intersects with markets and the global economy. I mean, this is what I've been doing for 25 years. And for 25 years, I'm told in instances like this that geopolitics don't matter much for markets. So somewhere along the line, strictly speaking, that isn't true, right?
So how do you feel about the role of the United States at this point? How may they change, or the United States rather, change their tact in terms of any future involvement, given what we know now?
Well, with respect to that ecosystem, the conflict in the Middle East, as I said, has bought Bibi Netanyahu more time when he is very much under pressure from within his own country. It's a boost for the Kremlin and for Putin, which will take advantage of the conflict in the Middle East, U.S. and European distraction to undertake a spring offensive. I think markets have got bored, frankly, with the conflict in Ukraine and decided it didn't matter very much. And then closer to home in the United States, as your correspondent described, the possibility that finally the House of Representatives may approve a vote on military aid to include not only Israel, but also Taiwan and Ukraine are significant. And then when it comes to U.S. elections, which is, the most closely watched political signpost of 2024, plenty of people are asking what this weekend might have looked like if former President Trump or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had been in the seat instead. And so, there are many kind of variables within this geopolitical ecosystem that are going to be impacted by the conflict in the Middle East and what happens next.
How do you think about the conflict in the Middle East? You mentioned Russia as well, into the U.S. election cycle. What added uncertainty does that create? Well,
I mean, the biggest risk that the world probably faces, in my view, is that Ukraine loses the war and Russia is emboldened. And again, I know that this is not the consensus view from U.S. market participants, but as a longtime specialist in Russia and in that part of the world, and thinking again about this wider ecosystem, if there is a failure to deliver more aid to Ukraine, even with Europe doing more, let's bear in mind that that spending is increasing. Germany has given another long-range missile setup for Ukraine. It may not be enough, and it may not be enough in time. And the signal that gives to other, revanchist powers. That means countries that want to take territory. We could think about China in this respect, whether it's Taiwan or the recent operations in the South China Sea. This is all about signaling in international relations. The direct impact on markets tends to be through either a growth shock or an asset price shock. Now we're thinking more about supply chains, but the interlinkages between these hotspots are much more connected than I think market participants are really appreciating at this time.
Tina, you've also written in your most recent note about implications for the yield curve, for rates as you see it. What are the implications? Where do you see the direction of travel, given that you mostly see the reaction still to U.S. economic data? Is the geopolitical risk not quite baked in?
Well, I don't think it's true that it's only impacting the U.S. economic data. If anything, there's a wider disconnect when it comes to U.S. impact, and that, of course, is because of U.S. energy independence, right? So I'm in London, and here in Europe, we are much more sensitive to higher gas prices, for example, because of the combination of the slight increase in the risk premium to oil prices, plus the war between Russia and Ukraine. So that really matters when both the UK and Germany, for example, are struggling to climb out of recession. And finally, wars are inflationary. It can be difficult to make the precise connection to market fundamentals, but there is no way that this is a positive situation, even if the possible risk to Brent crude isn't $20 a barrel and it's 5 or 6. That's still significant in an environment where every market participant is looking for how and when and how fast inflation will start to come down.
Tina Fordham, that is Fordham Global's Foresight's founder and geopolitical strategist. We thank you so very much for putting some thought around what has been happening over the weekend into the market moves today.